It's A-level results day. Hopefully you've gotten the grades you need or want it for your university choice or whatever path you've decided to take for your next step. You've probably clicked into this video because you're thinking about remarking your A-level Edexcel economics exam. And what I'm hoping to achieve through this video is to give you a little bit of an insight into how Edexcel operates, how examiners mark your A-level economics paper, just so that you're more informed, and so you could decide whether to go for that remark or not, and if so, which paper. Now, first of all, welcome to the channel. We're Homo Economicus, the home of economics. In this channel, we aim to discuss and explain A-level and IB economics concepts that you might come across, just so that you're more interested in economics as a subject overall. If you've got any questions that you want to discuss or ask, my email is linked at the bottom of the slide. Feel free to reach out if you've got any questions and if I can help in any way. So the first step for you to do is to check how far you are from the grade boundary below and above. This is important so that you know which paper you might want to think about remarking. As you know, there are 3 papers to your A-level economics exam: paper 1 micro, paper 2 macro, and paper 3 both micro and macro. What you might not know is that paper 1 and paper 2 are weighted just slightly more than paper 3. So paper 1 and paper 2 are worth 35% each, and paper 3 is worth 30% of your overall grade. Edexcel's got this amazing calculator where you can work out how many marks from your paper, the raw mark, translates into how many marks you've gotten on your results. So because the 2025 grade boundaries have not been released yet, I'm using the 2024 example as a works example. So let's just go through this example where, let's say, a student's gotten 268 marks in their Edexcel A-level economics, so firmly between the A and A star grade boundaries, and therefore gotten an A. 278 minus 268 is 10, so that means the student is 10 marks away from an A star. But what that really means is that you only need 8 marks from either paper 1 or paper 2 to get that A star, because 10 divided by the scaling factor of 1.173, if you round it, it will equal to 8. And so the student only needs 8 marks, actually, rather than 10. How this is useful is because you've got to play the game a little bit. How examiners mark the paper is not like the examiner doesn't read the whole paper and go, oh, we think the student is an A star student, therefore we're going to give it an A star. Each question is worth a certain number of marks, as you know, and after that, we marked each question, and after that, it's just simple addition. It's about whether you can hit that threshold that will get you past that A or A star or whatever grade that it is that you need for your grade. So it's quite good to know this arithmetic and how it works. What I will say is that these scaling factors for all 3 papers, they're not that different from one, so you're not going to be that far off in terms of the actual number of marks that you need. You'll only be looking at a 1 or 2 mark difference between the mark of the grade boundaries, the scaled mark versus the raw mark. Equally, you want to be thinking about how far you are from the grade boundary below, right? Because if you're at the bottom of grade A, you might get remarked into a B, because remarks can go up as well as down, right? So if you get dragged down to 250, that will bring you below the 251 threshold for an A, and therefore you'll get a B. So 268 minus 250 is 18. So equally, if you get if it gets marked down by 18 marks, scaled mark that is, you will get a B instead. Now again, 18 divided by 1.173 means 16, so that actually means just 16 marks from either paper 1 or paper 2, or 18 marks from paper 3 means that it will get dragged down to a B. And so, as you can see from this works example, this student is very firmly in the middle of grade A. So, whether or not to go for that remark will depend on a number of factors, which we will discuss in the next slide, namely whether there is any scope, whether you think there is a possibility that there is a massive error in judgment and marking in one of the questions. So the next thing you're going to do after checking the grade boundaries and how many marks you're away from the next grade boundary is to check your question by question breakdown. Now, Edexcel gives this to you through ResultsPlusDirect, which every student has access to, or you can also access the script through your center or school. This is particularly useful because it gives you an insight into how well you've actually performed, i.e. how many marks the examiner's given you versus how well you think you performed, right? So if you think you did really well in your 25 marker, but you ended up with a 10 out of 25, then maybe we can start thinking about, oh, okay, maybe it's worth sending this paper in for a remark because there is a massive discrepancy. This breakdown is particularly useful if you can remember how well you did in each of those questions. If you can remember the questions, it will allow you to analyze question by question, give you that breakdown into thinking, oh, okay, this feels like this marking might be off, or actually I can kind of see me getting that mark in all of those questions. And what that allows you to do is to decide, right, should I send in paper 1 for a remark, paper 2 for a remark, or paper 3 for a remark, right? Because as you know, remarks are expensive, and so you've got to be a little bit strategic in deciding which paper to go for first. So a bit about how Edexcel marks your paper. Like I said, the examiner doesn't mark your entire paper and go, oh, I think the student is an A-star student, therefore I'm going to give it an A-star mark. In fact, your paper is most likely not marked by one singular examiner. Each question is most likely marked by a different examiner because, as you'll probably remember, it's you answer different questions on different pages, and that gets scanned and broken down into responses for different questions. So each examiner marks from a pool of questions, and so they will have no idea that this response from question A and this response they mark in question B are from the same candidates. They just go through question by a pool of the same question, and so there is absolutely no chance that your entire paper is marked by the same examiner. And even if two different questions are marked by the same examiner, they wouldn't know because they just go through these pools of questions, and it's not like they mark one script from start to finish. So what this means is that there isn't actually a harsh or a lenient marker, because each question has a tolerance range. Each question, well, actually, subjective question has a tolerance range. Some questions are objective. For example, those calculation questions that you might have to do. And each examiner goes through rigorous training and makes sure that they're at least 80%, well, in tolerance 80% of the times. So that means there is at most a 20% chance that one of the questions is marked out of range. And what does it mean to be out of range? So for 5 markers and 8 markers, there is a leeway of 1 mark. So examiners are allowed to be off by 1 mark, and that will still be within tolerance. That will pass that 80% threshold that examiners have to meet. For 10 markers, 12 markers, and 15 markers, they can be off by 2 marks, and for 25 markers, they can be off by 3 marks. So anything beyond 3 marks for a 25 marker means that they're marking out of tolerance, and if they don't meet, if they're out of tolerance more than 20% of the times, they will be banned from marking. And so those marks will never make it to your script, to your results. What does this mean for you then? So I think if you've clicked into this video, you probably fall into one of two camps. You're either just 1 or 2 marks off, and you're thinking that, oh gosh, I'm so close to the next grade. Should I be going for a remark just to boost my grade? Or you think that your result is drastically different from what you're expecting. You are clearly an A student. Everyone's been saying that you will at least get an A, but you've gotten a C. So you think that there is a massive screw up somewhere in the marking process. So let's go through each of those scenarios and help you decide whether a remark is right for you. So if you're just looking for 1 or 2 marks, if you just want that little boost, if you're just so close to that next grade boundary, right? First of all, like I said, check the question by question breakdown and make sure that the essay questions or the subjective questions are in line with your expectation, right? Because the last thing you want is for a remark to come back and say, oh, sorry, we've actually overmarked this and we actually need to take you down massively by a grade boundary, right? So if you expect 25 out of 25, if you've gotten 10 out of 25, but you're expecting a 25 out 25, that's a massive difference, right? So check that there's no massive discrepancy, particularly in those subjective questions. Now, where you're likely to get the extra mark or 2 that you need is from those more objective, more discreetly marked question, where the examiner just goes tick, 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 you've got that point, you've got that point, you've got that method, give you that mark. You didn't get this point, don't award this mark. So those are the 5 markers, the 8 markers, but also the smaller questions, right? So the calculation questions, for example, the diagram questions, because examiners have an incentive to not award the top mark just to be in tolerance, but if there is an objective case for a mark change, they will do it. So if there's clearly a reason why you should be awarded an extra mark or 2 in the 5 markers, the 8 markers, the 4 markers, the 2 markers, then they have to, by regulation, they have to give you that mark, because they've objectively mismarked that question, right? But like I said, for essay questions, it's a lot more subjective, and there is a tolerance range, right? So you won't get that extra mark or 2 if you've gotten 22 out of 25 in your 25 marker, because actually I don't think I've seen 23, 24, or 25 being awarded in a 25 marker, because there is no incentive. So in reality, the actual cap for your 25 marker is actually 22 marks, because examiners have no incentive of giving you that extra mark, because there is a chance that the actual mark is below that. So they're more likely to be within that range by capping it at 22. And so if you're hoping to get that extra mark or 2 from those 25 markers, then if you see 21 or 22 out of 25 in your essay, that you're not going to get it there, right? Look for the 5 markers, 8 markers, 4 markers, 2 markers, whether there's any scope that you could improve your mark. Now, if you're quite a bit away and the result is not what you've expected, then again, let's visit this theme of being within tolerance. So I think firstly, check the big essays, check the 25 markers. Those are the ones that obviously are worth the most in your paper, right? And ask yourself whether you see it being within tolerance, right? So say, for example, you've been given 15 out of 25 and you don't think that's fair. Ask yourself, can you possibly see yourself anywhere between 12 and 18, right? Because that anywhere, 15, you're within tolerance, whether if an essay is anywhere from 12 to 18, right? So if the essay is actually worth 18 and you've been given 15, that is still a fair mark. That still would not get changed in a remark. So ask yourself, do you see yourself between 12 and 18? And if the answer is yes, then unfortunately, it's probably not worth it for you to ask for a remark, at least for that specific paper. You might want to look at the other papers that just to see where you're most likely to gain those marks. But this is how Edexcel operates, right? But if you think that you should be at least getting a 19 and you've gotten a 15, then we can maybe start thinking about, oh, okay, you might have a shot with a remark. But if you can see it as an 18, then it's not worth it. It's not worth your time. Start looking at the other papers. There are some practical considerations as well when thinking about whether to go for a remark, and I've broken it down into the 3 T's. What you've got to remember is that examiners are under time pressure when they're marking. So the 3 T's are technique, traceability, and timing. So what sort of practical considerations in terms of technique should you be considering? First of all, did you include a diagram, right? Does it justify, essentially, does your response match with the mark that you've gotten, right? And so these are very easy checks that you could, if you remember your response to the questions, if you haven't included a diagram and you think you should have gotten a 25 out of 25, well, it's quite unlikely, right? Because a lot of these A-level essays do require diagrams. Did you evaluate your arguments? If you've forgotten to evaluate your arguments, well, you know you're not going to get any evaluation marks, right? So, and for paper 3, did you include both micro and macro arguments? Because you need both for level 4. And so if you didn't include micro or macro, it doesn't matter how good it is. You know that you're not going to get level 4. Do you normally make your point clear at the start of a paragraph? If examiners have to guess what you mean, what your argument is, sometimes, you know, it's unfortunate, but you're just not going to get that top level mark. So are your techniques there? Like, can you remember when doing those exam papers whether you've nailed those things, right? And that should inform you what mark you should be getting in your questions, and therefore whether there is that discrepancy and whether you should be remarking. Secondly, traceability. It's one of those things where your teachers and examiners will never explicitly state, but again, examiners are rushed, right? There's a lot of scripts that they have to go through. They want to be able to mark quickly and efficiently, right? So can we see your different points clearly, right? So the different points, did you separate them with a gap, just a line in between the 2 paragraphs, right? Can I tell Did you potentially have 2 points within the same paragraph? Because I might not have read that second point, right? Or I might not be able to tell from your structure that there is a second point. Is your evaluation in a separate paragraph? Now I know a lot of teachers say that you should have evaluation within the same paragraph, but sometimes, examiners read a really, really long paragraph, but they don't know where the evaluation is, and there might be evaluation. And so it is much clearer to me as a reader if you have evaluation as a separate paragraph. And so if you have a tendency of having evaluation within your analysis, the original examiner might not have read that, and so maybe, just maybe, you can ask for a remark, and it is something that the senior examiner will pick up. Similarly, if you don't leave a gap between paragraphs, then it is something the original examiner might have missed. Is your handwriting easy to read? Again, it's one of those things where if your handwriting is difficult to read, examiners might just skim through it and guess your mark, whereas a senior examiner is hopefully more likely to be a bit more patient with reading your response. Did you have notes all over your response? Did you have asterisks and stars all over with notes that make your response difficult to read? If you're one of those students, then maybe there might be something worth crediting in one of the notes that the original examiner might not have read, right? And lastly, I think timing is worth, and is actually, for traceability, is your diagram big enough? Sometimes we see really, really small diagrams and we don't really know what's going on, and so we just don't credit the examiner. We don't like to guess. Especially with Edexcel's scanning, it's low resolution scanning. It's not high definition. So if your diagram's small, then maybe it might be worth remarking if you think that there is a massive discrepancy between the marks you've gotten and what you think your response is worth. Finally, timing. Do you need this remark urgently, right? So is it a matter of a university place? Because think about it, most students will ask for a remark right after the release of results. So examiners are overwhelmed. Again, it goes back to this theme of time pressure. So normally the week after results day is the busiest for these examiners, right? So if you need it urgently, then obviously you go for that remark. But when you're under time pressure, obviously there's scope for errors in judgment. So if you don't need it urgently, I'd say wait it out. Wait till the later on in the process when you can still ask for a remark. That way you can maximize your chances that the examiners remarking your paper aren't rushed. And also, you got to remember, after the release of results day, normally examiners are out of practice from marking for about at least a month, right? So they might be a little bit unfamiliar with the mark scheme, and so it will take some time for them to remember some of those things from the main marking season. So if you don't need this urgently, say for example you're considering a gap year, or the result of this remark actually isn't going to affect your university place at all, then I'd say wait it out a little bit, because later on examiners won't be as rushed. They will mark your papers more thoroughly, and they by say September, they will remember the mark scheme more clearly. Yeah, like I said, most people request remarks straight after results day, but there is a good reason for that, right? Loads of people are waiting on universities. So that's it. Hopefully that's been helpful. let me know if you've found this helpful. Hopefully it has been. Hopefully I've given you a bit of insight into how Edexcel works, and that you can now make an informed decision as to whether or not to go for that Remark. I wish you very good luck, both with your Remark as well as your future. Like I said, if you've got any questions, my email is there. Feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you've got and help in any way.